and how it is that essentially all the rich people are doing quite well and all the poor people are going to suffer the consequences of the current situation we now face within the economy. Now, many people want to come up with excuses for this, and there really is no excuses. There is a reason, and once you understand the reasons, you can eliminate all the excuses. So the excuses are coming down to that of, say, a political environment or a greed in or corporate greed or something of that nature. But ultimately, it comes down to the Cantillon effect. And once you understand the Cantillon effect and how it is that new money injection coming into the system will create ever increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor, then you eliminate all the excuses. You understand how come it is we have such a divide, how it is that the rich keep getting richer and yet the poor keep struggling to try and get their paychecks to stretch out further throughout the month. And it really comes down to a mindset of the people and how it is that they conduct themselves, and it's human nature. This is what does it, right? I mean, you can basically say that luxurious experiences is the main culprit. But to understand how it is that a luxurious experience creates the magnitude of inequality that we now have here in the United States, you really have to step it back and understand from the economic forces that have been playing out for literally thousands of years. Now, Cantillon's essay on economic theory has three amazing chapters in it, chapters 6, 7, and 8. In part 2 of the essay, the increase and decrease of money to the state. Now, I'm going to break this down in the simplest way that I possibly can. I got it down into 8 points, right? 8 points here that once you have internalized these particular ideas of what it is that's happening out here, it all of a sudden starts to make sense on why it is we are experiencing that of what we are here now in the economy. Now, to begin with, to understand, it's the rise of an industrious people. When you become industrious, when you start making more money, when you are building a product that is better than anybody else out there, when you are providing a service that is better than anybody else, you are going to get a new money, right? You are going to increase your wealth. Now, think about it. If you are 18 years old getting your first job, think about that new money that comes in. All of a sudden, you have the ability to pay for car insurance on a regular basis, means you can even have a car. Right? So just the idea of having new money coming in because you have rised as an industrious person or people or country or nation or corporation or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's a matter of being an industrious person first, right? Once that happens, the new money starts to come in. Now, when you look at Cantillon's essay, he describes it through a silver mine, and you can think about it through war effort. You can think about it through the distribution of products, being the best manufacturer. So it doesn't really matter how the new money comes in, including that of the banking system. The underlying economic forces will essentially be the same. They just grow in magnitude if you have ever increasing amounts of it coming in. So once you recognize that it's new money coming in, whether it's through the silver mine, whether it's through war effort, whether it's through trade balances, money printing, it doesn't matter, right? As long as it's continuous and continuously coming in. Same thing will always happen. Okay. So, rise of the industrious person, nation, doesn't matter what it is, that's the new money coming in. And for example, here in the United States, we rose as an industrious nation because we were a manufacturing powerhouse. And we produced the world's greatest stuff and sent that stuff out there to the world, and the world sent us their money. And at the time, it was their gold. So very interesting things happened during the time. A lot of war, a lot of banking shifts, a lot of the way that we conduct ourselves, the compensation of gold. There was a million things that were taking place. But ultimately, it was the manufacturing and sending that manufactured goods out there to the world, and the world sending us their money. That is what increased our income. And we rose as a standard of living here in the United States that rose dramatically, where a single income would be enough to provide for the entire household. Now, people say, oh man, that was a time of long ago when the corporations were willing to give up more money. That's not the case. The fact is we were manufacturing stuff that people were buying and new money was coming in. And that gave us the ability to have that single income be able to provide enough for the entire household. We were trading our real services and goods that we were making out there to the world, and the world was sending us their money. And that's essentially what raised that standard of living. So that's really important to understand as far as it goes. All right, we got 47 people in 5 minutes. How is the audio? Everything sounding okay? Sending this to Wayne in my WhatsApp group. Right on, deplorable. Can we think of it as debasement? Because that's what happens a lot of the time, in my opinion. All right, our billionaires can fund a ballroom, but not fund food stamps. Yeah. Let's see here. Morning, Simon. All right. Audio and visual is good. Thank you so much. All right. Continuing on. All right. So that's the first step, right? Rise of an industrious people. And then two, increase consumption. Now, when you raise your consumption, this is really where the problem starts, but it doesn't really unfold yet, right? It just starts here because when you increase your consumption, what you are going to do is you are going to start creating the supply demand imbalances that are out there within the economy. So there's only so much supply. And then when the demand starts to increase, right, the supply demand imbalances start causing the prices to increase. Now, this is a problem for the people who are at the end of the line, right? The people who are at the end of the line, they suffer the most from this as their money hasn't really flown to them yet, it hasn't flowed to them yet, but yet the prices of everything are starting to move up. So when they go out there to buy things, they are suffering the consequences as it takes ever increasing amounts of their hours in order to do that consumption. So again, as the new consumption starts to rise the prices of everything, the people at the end of the line, they're suffering from this. But the overall economy looks fairly good during these times as the added consumption is now coming out inside of those numbers. But there are people who are suffering the consequences. Now, when we look at it, really, what is it that's taken place, right? If it's this added consumption, it's the added luxurious experience. That's what they want. They want a nicer car, a nicer house, a nicer couch, a nicer clothing, a nicer whatever, nicer vacations. It's a luxurious experience that does it. See, they're not satisfied with what it was that they had. Once they got the new money, once they increased the income that they were having comparatively to their standard of living, they increased their standard. Right? They increased what it is that they were buying. So now this is a major problem when it comes to the domestic manufacturers. So to understand this is the really where the problem starts to set in, because people want to blame this on corporations being greedy, or they want to blame it on politicians or something of that nature. But what's really happening here is competition. As the increase in the standard of living has occurred, means the individual who was manufacturing these goods and sending those goods out there to the world and getting that new money that caused them to raise their standard of living is now going to compete against somebody else out there who is going to produce what it is that they were selling to the world and getting their money in that raised their standard of living. They now have to compete against a foreign producer out there who's going to now produce what it is that they were producing that made them so rich, and they have to compete against that. This is where the problem really starts to come in, because now the domestic manufacturer has to go find a cheaper manufacturing location. They can't compete with a higher standard of living. They have to go and find a lesser standard of living out there in order to manufacture. Now, this isn't something that is political greed or corporate politics or anything you want to call it like that. What this comes down to is profit, right? It's not greed, it's being able to stay in business. And if you can't produce here and sell it and make a profit, and there's a foreign competitor out there who's going to do that, you can't compete. That's all there is to it. Now, this is something that is recognized hundreds of years ago, and you can reinvent the wheel into whatever meaning you want to give it, and it can be political greed and, corporate politics that are doing it for you that's making this all happen. But really, when you recognize how it is that you cannot compete against a foreign producer out there who is going to have a lesser standard of living than what you are asking for or demanding for in order to produce the same products, that's really what's going on. Yeah. All right. So average pay at this point cannot keep up. Because when you think about how it is that the new money comes in and where it is that it's coming from, it's not coming from the production of goods and services that are going out there to the world and the world sending the money. Them down there at the bottom, right, the people who have last access to the money, they are essentially looking to the top to where it is that they can get their money from, their new money. So it's not new money coming in from debt issuance coming to them in the form of being able to buy assets that can then have a return on that debt capital essentially that's out there. To understand that the purchasing of life itself, all the expenses within it, has to come from the trading of time for dollars. And now there's this separation that is going to take place within these two classes. Right? People who are working hard every single day in order to acquire what it is that they need, which is a trading of time for dollars. And then you have a group of people out there who are getting a return on capital investments, dividend paying stocks, something out there that is then causing them to have a secured rate of interest beyond that of their occupation. This right here is really where the classes have now separated, and it doesn't really matter how much money you make. See, this is where you got the rich versus the poor, and I think it's really different now. I think it's investing versus the working class. So you have people who are mindful of the thought of moving money into a return. Like, I have to cut back on my expenses as much as possible in order to find some sort of business, some sort of investment, rental income, something out there to then move into beyond that of my day job or whatever it is I got going on out there. Because if I don't do that, I can't compete. I can't compete against the people who are investors, who have assets, who are constantly seeing their stock portfolios move up, watching their, real estate moving up. This is a very difficult thing for a working class to compete against, but this is essentially what ends up happening when you had such magnitudes of luxurious experiences from the new money pouring in and the domestic manufacturers leaving. It leaves the people at the end of the line looking to the top to get the new money. And they're not getting new money. They're getting money that's already been, spent into the economy, and now it's filtering down to them. So ever increasing amounts of new money. This is if it continues to pour in, right? So now that we're in a situation now that we will have ever increasing amounts of foreign production continuing to pour in. And this is one of the reasons why you see such dramatic efforts and attempt to try and prevent that from happening. Like, we're going to bring good manufacturing jobs back to the United States, all this massive tariffs, all this other stuff. This is the reason why you find so much of that being spoken right now. It's literally the evidence of the collapse and failure of our manufacturing state. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. So important to understand that. Like, the manufacturing state is collapsing. Otherwise, they wouldn't need the tariffs and the dramatic, impacts to what it is we're finding with trade partners and all this other stuff to try and keep it here. It's going to take ever increasing amounts of subsidies and tariffs in order to keep the manufacturers here because of the luxurious experience that the upper half is having in buying the production of foreigners. This is really important. I know it's complicated, but it really comes down to these steps, right? And now, again, when we think about how it is this is breaking down, if this continues, this ever increasing amounts of new money pouring into the system, we are going to find that there is going to be two classes of people, and people are going to think it's rich versus poor, but I don't believe that's going to be the case. Because what you're going to find is people who are earning $300,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. I couldn't believe it when I was reading that article, and I'm thinking, well, I guess it really depends on where you live. But to be honest, if you're earning $300,000 a year and you're living paycheck to paycheck, that is what in the hell is going on here? You're effed. You're effed, right? You are not gonna survive any of this stuff if that's the case, right? Because your expenses are far too high, and there's no way that you are ever going to be able to put yourself in a position in which that you are going to be able to acquire enough in assets to compensate for how much you are spending every single day. That's ridiculous, right? But it's out there and there's plenty of people who do it. $300,000 a month living paycheck to paycheck. Yet there are also people out there who are earning $50,000 a year and they're saving $15,000 a year. Those people are doing quite well. They're sitting in an economy that has ever increasing amounts of asset prices that are moving up, and they are definitely moving themselves into a position in which that they can take advantage of that. $50,000 a year is just fine. Living on $35,000 a year is absolutely poor living conditions to the absolute, to like as much as you can get down there in your expenses, driving the absolute worst cars, living in the simplest of conditions that you can possibly get to, because earning $15,000 a year beyond that of your expenses and deploying that into capital investments or dividend paying stocks or rental properties or something of that nature is going to put you on the other side of the wedge, which is on the top side of this K-shaped recovery. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It matters how you position yourself with that money. If you position yourself to spend $30,000 a month, you are screwed. But if you position yourself to save $2,000 a month, or $1,000 a month, or even $50 a month, think about how awesome of a position that you are in considering most Americans that are out there. And this is the reason why. It comes down to those three things: the rise of an industrious people who increased their income, increased their consumption, they moved into a luxurious experience, which brought in foreign production, which exported the domestic manufacturers, and now we have a dependent economy sitting on ever-increasing amounts of new money, and the rich spending that money, and the poor hopefully getting some sort of idea of the trickling down. This is what we're left with. So understanding how that happens and why it's occurring this way can then give you a much better idea on what it is that you need to do, because there is definitely people out there who are killing it in this economy right now, considering the things that are taking place. And when you have a K-shaped recovery where you have a bunch of people out there who are absolutely killing it, you have to think, why? How is it? It's not a secret. They are doing something different from what you're doing. Think about what it is that they are doing. I even think about it for myself when I think, hey, 9 years ago, I had nothing. I had almost nothing at all. I had a little tiny box of silver. I had a bunch of debt. I had hardly any income, and I completely switched that around in a matter of 9 years. And now I think about the vehicles that I drive, this 97 Suburban and a 99 Ford Explorer and a 2001 S10 that has a dead battery in it right now. Like, these are my vehicles. They run, they get me around, they cost me very little, gives me an ability to put a lot away. I was even asking, my wife earlier today, I said, because she has, from the school, because she works at the school district, she has a 403B, and I asked her about it. I said, how much are you actually contributing to that? When she told me, I thought, man, this is it. We are actually in a position in which that we are acquiring the things that we need in order to have what it is in our life that is going to make it somewhat reasonable to say, man, I can have a decent retirement, and I'm not even asking for much. And that's what's awesome about it, is like I figured out how it is that I can do this. And I'm not even getting, like, I don't even think I'm getting that much of a reward. My reward is to feel like I've actually accomplished a position in which that I can pay my bills and I'm not sinking. That's my reward. I don't know how many people out there want to fly around on jet airplanes and go traveling all over and eating at the fanciest restaurants and having some big giant number in their bank account, but that's not me, and that's not what I was looking for. What I was looking for was the ability to be doing exactly what it is that I'm doing right now. And it's not that hard once you figure it out, but once you see it and you know that it's not just a matter of some exterior, idea that something is going to change and make your life better. It's a matter of positioning yourself to understand how it is that this is going down. They're not going to fix it for you. That's for sure, right? There's no fixing any of this stuff. Because fixing it is something that would be a matter of turning off the new money supply coming in. And if that new money supply stops coming in, what you're going to find is pain and misery for the majority of the people out there, except for just a very few at the very top of the whole scale. And so keeping the consumption going means keeping the idea of ever increasing amounts of new money coming into the system means that there is going to be a two-tiered system definitely taking place. The working class suffering day to day, trying to figure out how it is that they're going to live paycheck to paycheck, and those who have actually cut back on their expenses and turn those extra dollars, extra money, the money beyond the money you're already spending, into returning on investment of some sort. Like whether it's business or stocks or, even like the idea of speculation into, cryptocurrencies or gold or something of that nature can at least have some idea that it's going to have a return beyond that of what it is that you have today. Like your purchasing power will hopefully go up with that. But if you don't take a position like that, your day job will never keep up. It just won't. It's going to fall further and further and further behind. And I mean, you're seeing it, like the paycheck to paycheck jobs are becoming more prevalent within the economy. That used to be like good paying jobs. A good job used to be good, and now a good job sucks. And this is an unfortunate consequences of the conditions in which that I was talking about. There's ever increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system. I would love to blame politicians for it and corporate greed and all the other stuff. I would love to do that. There was a time in my life I did. I was really good at it, actually, and I had this great conspiracy theory mindset that would do a great job of delivering all the information that you could ever have possibly imagined about how it is it's their fault and it's creating this pain and suffering for you. But ultimately you're never going to change that, and unless you understand what it is that you can do to try and solve the problem that you are going to face with that new money pouring in, creating that circumstance that you call corporate greed or you know political political slavery on you or something, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, you can fight against that. You can literally push against it and deal with it in a way that says, man, that doesn't affect me like that. I'm one of the people that doesn't bother. And people much want to say, no, dude, you got to let it bother you, right? And then they say something like, you're sticking your head in the sand. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, man. I'm like putting myself in a position in which I can pay my bills. And then somebody else says, dude, you're ignorant. And I'm thinking, when I was listening to the things that they were talking about, I was absolutely broke, suffering the consequences, and thought that, man, I'm going to end up in the gutter here pretty soon. Like, which one's more valuable to you? Right? Knowing that it's underlying economic forces that are playing out, understanding how it is that the political forces, yes, are creating ever increasing amounts of new money coming into the system. Yes, that is a political event taking place. However, it's the underlying economic forces from new money coming in. It doesn't matter how it's coming in. It's the fact that new money is pouring in. And if you're going to have new money pouring in, this is the result every time. So yeah, you can say, man, they put the hole in the boat. Look at, they put this hole in the boat, and I'm like, yeah, okay, then they put the hole in the boat. The boat's going to sink. No doubt about it. Do you want to continue to blame them for putting a hole in the boat, or do you want to deal with the fact that there's a hole in the boat? Because we can deal with that in a way that makes us survive the consequences of there being a hole in the boat. But you got to understand that bitching about the hole in the boat in a way that says they did it doesn't solve anything. It literally doesn't. Like, you might be able to give some idea of why it's there and then get the clues of what it is that you need to do to deal with the fact of how it got there. Like, some of that might be understandable to try and research and get. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you still need to figure out what you need to do. Right? Like, even if you did figure out who did it. All right, $5 from Terry Millie Boulevard. Thank you so much for the $5. This channel is like therapy for my financial journey. Just checking in. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And the conversations that we have here, I know, are unique to the working class individual to understand what it is that's taking place right now, because not a lot of people take the time to try and really research economics and understand what's happening. And economics is really a very personal view. It's what it is that you are feeling and thinking and understanding about what it is that you need to do with your life. Because if you're 18 years old with no skills, or you're 80 years old trying to hold on to a retirement, you're not doing or thinking the same things. Like, at all, right? And so understanding that we are all looking at the same weather conditions, but we are not conducting or operating the same boats, right? Everybody is conducting themselves differently, and to understand that the economic conditions that are out there are unique to us and our positions and how it is that we are operating ourselves, that's the point of it. You have to internalize it for yourself. So many people out there will deliver economic information as a one-sided, plain, cut and dry, black and white, no other way of looking at it kind of view. Money printer go burr, prices go up. What else do you need to know? It's ignorant to say anything else. But then again, it's very difficult to try and explain to somebody who has that mindset that quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve was looking for in order to conduct their monetary policy, because of a low neutral interest rate that was ever closer to the lower bound of zero. So when the Fed funds rate hit the lower bound of zero, they were not far enough below neutral to actually stimulate the economy, and all the money printing really ended up on the big bank's balance sheet and didn't really chase goods and services unless it was lent into the system. And so this is the reason why all the money printing back in the day that took the Fed's balance sheet from $850 billion to over $4.5 trillion failed to produce an inflationary scenario. And I understand that most people who hear that probably won't understand a single word I said. But that's the case, right? That's why money printer go burr, prices don't go up. But it's very difficult to understand that. And so it's just much easier to just step back and say, you know, it's kind of dumb to say that money printer doesn't cause the inflation. You're kind of dumb, dude. Whatever. You know? I mean, this monetary policy is playing the inflation expectations. In fact, I think let me see if I saved it. I mean, we're ways into this. We got the good information. Everybody who's made it this far has got all the information. Now let's go and have the discussion. Hey, you got links down below. Let's break down some questions. Let's talk about this a little bit. All right. All Nighter says, well then, thanks a bunch of times. All right, let's cruise up here and see. Trash Can Man just checking in. All right. Are you calling me out all night? Okay, you never have paid off house. Property taxes are insane. All right. Yes, I have a big family. I need a huge shovel. All right. You are correct when you said it all depends on where you live. $35,000 a year in the U.S. is struggle, while that same amount can afford you a luxurious life outside the U.S. and in many parts of the world. Yeah, and so that's just the thing. Can you earn $35,000 a year outside of the United States in order to say, hey man, I can have this luxurious experience outside of the United States with $35,000 a year? How do you do that? Most people are stuck going to a location in order to earn their money. They have to show up at the office, show up at the yard, show up at the job site, show up at the store. They have to show up somewhere in order to make that living, and that not being a place outside of the United States in which that they can earn $35,000 a year. They have to earn it inside the United States and then figure out how it is that they can make that $35,000 a year work. And that is very, very, very difficult to do here in the United States, especially at $35,000 a year. Now, even at $100,000 a year, I used to think that $100,000 a year was like some sort of amazing amount of income because I didn't really make that much money. And when you're in debt, like $20,000, and you have no way of paying that off, that's an incredible amount of money. Like, I don't care how much, like, you end up with or whatever. If you are in debt with no way of paying off $20,000 might as well be $200,000. It doesn't matter, right? At that point. However, being in a position in which that you are out of that, it changes the entire world, right? It changes everything about the way that you are thinking and feeling and operating, about how you are going to be able to conduct yourself going into the future. And it's weird, like, having no money means you have no options and no ideas, but really you have all the options in the world. You're not limited by anything if you have nothing. Right. And that's a very important thing to understand. And most people don't see it that way. They think like, if I have nothing, I have no options. But that's really not the case. If you have nothing, you have all the options in the world. And it's very difficult to see it that way, but that's really the truth, right? So when you start stepping into a world where you have a lot of options and you start taking advantage of those options, you realize that, man, if you can start acquiring a position, you start opening up even more options for yourself. So, for example, when I was able to start saving, I was able to finally get myself out of debt. I was able to save enough, $3,000. I had $3,000 in credit card debt. And the day that I had the two of them together, I paid it off. And it was an amazing feeling that I had that came from that, right? It elevated me in a way that I couldn't believe. I was all of a sudden like looking at the world with much better positive attitude, and then I was just experiencing it in a better way. Like it was so odd to think that when I would walk into the like, you have to think the Pacific Northwest is like coffee snobs, right? And so we really enjoy the coffee that we experience here up in the Pacific Northwest. I go into the gas station, which is your regular old gas station coffee, and it smells so good. Why? What made it smell so good today? Yesterday it was okay. Today it smells good. It smells really good. Huh. The people's conversations that you have, they're funny. The ones that are negative don't bother you. All of a sudden, this whole world changes in the way that you would never believe. Debt holds you down psychologically and in a way that does not benefit you whatsoever. If you can turn that debt into a cash flow, maybe something different would be, but most people use the debt to have a luxurious experience, which is then a negative on their life. That's a negative on everything out there. You know, you change that around, all of a sudden you don't have that debt. You're experiencing the world in a much better fashion. You're looking at the world better, right? You start accumulating that money, and pretty soon you get up to like a point where you could have enough to make a year's worth of payments on your house, right? Now you're not stressed paycheck to paycheck, right? This is a huge difference inside of everything that you are experiencing inside of your world. The ability to say, man, if anything happened, I could still be making payments on my house. I could still live here. I can try and figure out what it is I need to do, but I have the resources. Holy moly. Talk about a complete demeanor change inside of your experience. Paycheck to paycheck to all of a sudden having the ability to say, man, a year could go by and I would be able to get through that. You know, I mean, I may not be happy at the end of that, but I can at least get through that. That's an amazing feeling to have. And then something absolutely incredible takes place when you get to 100,000. Because once you're at 100,000, every single option that you have ever possibly imagined has just now opened up. Businesses, real estate, travel, all the stuff, like everything that you could ever possibly imagined is now all of a sudden at an option. You may not be able to get it. It may not be like some people would be like, dude, it's not that much money. Nah, you don't understand. For somebody who had no options whatsoever, $20,000 in debt with very little income and no resources whatsoever, $100,000 is a completely different world. Completely different world. And so once you have achieved that sort of level, and it doesn't even need to be that much, it's like for a lot of times when you don't have it, it's the most, like, you know, I said $20,000 in debt when you have no resources and no ability to pay it off, might as well be $200,000, right? But there's a whole different mindset that takes place when you're at $100,000, where you can cash out assets, trade assets for something that's going to be into a cash flow or a different position. You have a whole world that now has the opportunity for you to do something that was never provided for you when you were at that lower income, in that lower working class position. It's just not going to work down there. And so this is important to now understand, is that this economy, the general economy and the way that everybody is now conducting themselves in it, that working class paycheck to paycheck will leave you stepping further and further down, right? Because there's so many people out there who are now taking their money and they are putting it into a position in order to get a secured rate of interest beyond that of their occupation. And by doing that, they are literally going to put themselves up in a position that they are eventually going to be property owners. By being a property owner, you are on the other side of the wedge. I don't care who you are. You own property, you are in a position of acquiring property, you are on the other side of the wedge, and I don't care what living conditions. You might be poor as hell, but if you're sitting in a house with property, you're definitely on the other side of the wedge. Yeah. And people, and don't let anybody else try to convince you you're not. Right? Don't. It's not the case. If you got it, you're on it. Right? All right. It told me that in about 1,000 days they will flip the switch. All right. Not only am I conscious in watching every live video, but I am also in your phone. All right. Yeah. Let's see here. 100K level is huge when you come from nothing. Just don't delve into luxuries or else it will catch up to you. Yeah, absolutely. And see, that's the point. Like, once understanding it, like, I think that's a lot of times, it almost takes a time in your life of being completely broke without nothing and no resources and no abilities. Like, if you have a moment in your time in which that you are experiencing that and you are able to get out of that, the amount of life lessons and abilities that you can now deal with things that most people, excuse me, would be very like not wise to. You can be wise to it. Like I remember, like recently a buddy of mine just shut down a business that he had tried starting, right? And he was really excited about it when he took off and everything was going. It was a very small operation, but he was excited about it, and he really wanted this thing to do well. All like it seemed like every single week or month, every single week or every other week throughout the month, he was talking about something else that was causing him to have to deal with some issue. It was costing him money, it was causing him problems, whatever. He was going through this and he would have to face these things every single week or every other week. There would be another thing that would come up in order to get this business working and being functional. So when he finally got there and he finally smoothed out everything, the economy started to slow down, right? And his business kind of depended on a lot on tourist traffic. And since tourism kind of is falling, he was losing out on a lot of sales because of this. And so eventually he just shut the business down. And I'm thinking, dude, are you going to try it again? And he was like, no way, man. I learned my lessons on that. And I'm like, but that's the case, right? You learned all those lessons. Like, you know what to do now. You know the mistakes that you made. You know the things that you have to get done. You know all this stuff, and now you're just going to let that go. You learn the lessons, but you don't want to use them because you're scared. I get it. I mean, I'd be scared too. Like, he's going through a lot right now, bankruptcies and all kinds of stuff. It's just a sad story, and I totally get it, right? I mean, I totally get it. But to think like he totally gave up on all the lessons that he had learned, and I'm thinking, man, you got something that most people have no idea of. They have to go through all that crap in order to get what you got, and you're just gonna let it all go. I get it. I understand. Yeah. All right. Infamous NYC, thoughts on Web 3.0? These coins made by these decentralized networks sound like scams when I try to research what said coin is used for, and it's super general. Yeah, I don't know. Like, when it comes to all the coins, unless you're talking like a stable coin coming from one of the corporations that are out there already, like PayPal or Venmo, or even like something like, Walmart coin or something like that, which all these would essentially be stable coins. And I really see that kind of happening. Even Myron just recently did a speech talking about this, which we should really cover. I need to start doing some member only live streams. Some of the things that are taking place within that, I think, is going to become quite prevalent within the economy. Like the whole tokenization of the entire economy and within the cash itself being removed slowly from the system. I think that's taken place. And the idea that eventually, in order to make a purchase at one of these stores or one of these locations, you're going to have to use their personal tokenized stable coin issued Walmart coin or something else, which would then immediately be transferred to whatever tokenized item that you are buying so that they can make the purchase of those items. And then like this is all going to be like, done on blockchain technology and nobody's going to understand it and they're just going to be okay with it because at least they get to go home with their chicken nuggets. All right, let's see here. AI is for common folks. It's awesome. Don't believe everything AI tells you. Look for verification is my recommendation. Absolutely, all-nighter. I have found that when I try to question AI on a lot of the monetary policies or facts about lumber, like the lumber industry, two things that I feel that I really, really have dove into doing a lot of research and understanding of those two particular things. I can get not only Grok but Chat GPT to correct their responses due to the delivery of facts that I have within the Fed's own words and speeches, because generally those two are using the narrative in order to form a response. And you can pinpoint that once you know the truth of it. You can ask them a question, almost like gaslighting. You can like lead them down a particular line of questioning that will then have them responding in a particular way to all of a sudden you then hit them with like the facts of a speech or something that says, no, this is what they're really attempting to do. And they say it right here. And you show how it is that their responses were inaccurate. And it's amazing to get like, some of the responses back out of it. And for me, like I use it as a debating tool. Like I just use it to try and form better responses as far as the questions that I get from like, aren't you worried about the BRICS nations or something? And then so I'll start questioning it and then I'll start delivering it facts like, hey, have you ever thought about some of the like literally ask Grok, have you thought about, right? Have you thought about the working paper of dollar funding stresses in China, in which that the dollar was, absolutely in high demand during the pandemic, in which that the lack of liquidity through most of these corporations and companies and countries and all that outside of the United States, the fact that they suffer because of their dollar denominated issuance of debt, that they couldn't find the dollars to pay them. And that's a huge issue that most people have no idea about. Like it's like people ask me what it keeps you up at night. It's stuff like that that keeps me up at night, not the money printer. Money printer, no, that's not the problem. It's the dollar demand outside of the United States due to the dollar funding stresses that are experienced from liquidity issues when the demand for dollars absolutely explodes due to the fact that there is corporations, nations, people who have written debts that are due in dollars that have nothing to do with the United States. And these, some of these, a lot. I mean, it's not like the BRICS nations are not these people too. Brazil, India, China, South Africa, they all write debts that are due in dollars. All right. I never heard of using AI as a debate partner. Intriguing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like that's the one thing that I actually found that is useful out of it is because it really goes from the narrative. And if you can destroy the narrative, then you can destroy most people's belief systems. And that's a lot of times when I have to remember that when people argue and get mad and say like really hateful things on this channel, it's because I shattered their belief system. You shatter somebody's belief system and they lose their mind. They think, oh crap, every decision that I have made up until this point has been wrong. And I'm telling them, yeah, from a 97 Suburban talking about monetary policy, I just shattered your belief system and every decision that you have made up until this point has been wrong. Done on, I mean, maybe it's not a wrong decision, but it was based on wrong information. And it's because, right, mainstream media is used as a propagandized delivery machine. Most people know it and then they still do it. They still use it. It's sad. Like literally people will say it out loud and then say, oh man, but I saw on the news. Well, you just said it. It's propagandized information. And then you say, oh, well, I saw this facts on the news. And it's just like, oh, good Lord. Yeah. 44 minutes into the live stream. If you guys are having fun, go hit that like button. By hitting that like button, the thumbs up, you will get the YouTube algorithm to grab this video, spread it around for more people to join in. And with 196 people watching, we should be well over 100 likes. And we should have thousands of people watching this information right now. AI. George Gammon had a whole monetary debate in AI after he uploaded specific material to train it on that focused topic. Yeah. Federal Reserve notes are promised to pay. You know, Federal Reserve notes are more than just a promise to pay, right? Because it's actually the liability of the Federal Reserve. And so if you think about the Federal Reserve Bank going bankrupt, it's Federal Reserve notes, the paper folding dollars, that has first lien and paramount right to the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. Now, I know that's really difficult to understand, and there's probably very little chance in hell that you'll ever be able to go to the Federal Reserve with your paper dollars going, hey, you bankrupt suckers, I want first access to your balance sheet. Like, that's probably not going to be the case. But the fact that it is written down that way does give it some validity that there is going to be some sort of value beyond that of a reserve or a bank deposit or something else that the Federal Reserve note itself carries beyond anything else out there, including the stablecoin issuance, right? So Federal Reserve notes are the first lien and paramount right to the Federal Reserve's balance sheet in case they go bankrupt. And you have to think, well, what do they have on their balance sheet? They have U.S. Treasuries, which is the majority of it, but they also have mortgage-backed securities, although they are unwinding those and going to try and end that whole holdings of mortgage-backed securities. But they also have special drawing rights, which is a basket of world currencies, and they hold things like gold. Right? So even down deep at the very end of the line, there is still this kind of idea that dollars have a gold backing to it. Not really, right? But kind of, in that sense, that Federal Reserve notes have first lien and paramount right to the Fed's balance sheet, and on the Fed's balance sheet, somewhere buried deep down in there, there's a little bit of gold. Just saying, yeah. All right. Since we're cooking with Mr. Relative, look up epistemic relativism. All right. Just got back from Mexico, saw many BYD cars. Do you think we will see deflationary pressure on the U.S. tech like Tesla and iPhones when foreign tech is just good? Is just as good, even better, but always way cheaper, also way cheaper. Well, yeah, that's the unfortunate consequences of it. And you have to think like the only vehicles that are really being produced here in the United States that have any kind of real sales to them are the luxurious ones, right? Like we don't build cheap cars for people to drive around. There was a time when we did. Like all the vehicles we built were cheap vehicles. We built the best cars in the world, right? That, they were awesome. And we don't do that here anymore. We have to build luxurious vehicles because those are the ones that sell. Like if you wanted to build a cheap car, you would have to compete against other people out there who are building cheap cars. And they build cheap cars way easier and better and all that than we can. We just don't build cheap cars in that sense. But we can build a really expensive vehicle, right? And competing in that fashion, well, yeah, we can build nice, really expensive vehicles and charge people a lot of money for it because it's a luxurious experience that they're really getting, because that's really what this economy is about. Right? Now, it shouldn't be that way, but you can see that's one of the symptoms of the Cantillon effect. There was a time when the people were producing wonderful vehicles that they would send out to the world. That means we had wonderful vehicles for ourselves to drive around. But now, only vehicles that are really being produced are for high-end consumers. That doesn't leave you with a vehicle to drive. It leaves you with a 97 Suburban. All right. More money in luxuries cars. Yeah. Ford Focus luxury. No, I'm talking about the majority of vehicles that you're finding. You're going to find there's a couple of vehicles out here that are available, but how many are there comparatively to what it is that's being sold? It's the high-end luxurious market, right? Or higher end, right? I mean, vehicles that are selling beyond $50,000. Like, who's really spending $50,000 on their vehicle other than people who are living paycheck to paycheck or the wealthy? That's all there is to it, I mean, I'm not buying a $50,000 vehicle. I could. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to because I want to be in the position in which that I have a return on capital investments based on the idea that I'm earning money beyond the money that I'm already making. The extra money, like that. All right, modern cars are superficious mobiles, superfluous. Who really needs TVs, etc. and in a damn car? Get more from A to B. Yeah. All right. If money wasn't an issue, what new truck would you get? If money wasn't an issue, what new truck would I get? I wouldn't. I like this truck. I like this truck because it's all beat up and old and empty, and I can just fill it up with whatever I want, and it doesn't really matter what happens to it. So I would like this truck. But if you're talking what kind of vehicle I'd want, it would be cool to drive around like I've always thought about the Camaro. I saw one for sale earlier today, and they wanted like it was in great shape too. It was like $3,000, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on with this vehicle? And then I realized it was really old, and it had a lot of miles on it, but they had done a lot to the vehicle and kept really good care of it and stuff like that. But I'm thinking, no, I'm not paying that much for, I'm not paying for a vehicle that old, right? Because if I'm going to have the experience of driving something fun and luxurious like that, I'm going to have a nicer one. So since I can afford a nicer one, I'll hold out for a nicer one. But at this point, I don't even really care. So, to me, I would rather drive something awesome on the weekend. Like what I envision, if I wanted a vehicle beyond this, then I would want something that my wife and I could go cruise down the coast a ways and go have lunch somewhere and act like rock stars. That's it. And then after that, I don't know why I would want it. It's the weather here is too crappy to have a nice car, and it's too dangerous of a highway. And I'd much rather be in this thing because it's safer and better and just cheaper and all that other stuff. Um, Trucks are super expensive to maintain. They are. I might get a sports car someday. In the meantime, it's a reliable, cheap, and low maintenance. I'm taking that. Yeah, me too. To be honest, how shaky the intersected sector is getting, it wouldn't buy a vehicle. Oh, hey, Mama. What do you got? Pretty. Oh, thank you. Hot. Appreciate you, Mama. Love you. Love you. Nice, isn't this sweet of her? All right. Not the truck. I need a vehicle though. What does it say? I wouldn't buy a vehicle right now, especially not a truck. I need a vehicle though. Well, there's a lot of vehicles out there. Like, I mean, I cruise around and I constantly look for vehicles all the time, even though I don't need one. I am constantly got my eye out for one. I saw one that was $800 the other day, and somebody actually called me up and they were like, "Dude, do you know any cheap vehicles?" And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I just saw one, $800, right?" And I mean, who knows if it runs? But if you're just looking for something to get around the city, get to work on time, and it starts and it stops, who cares what it looks like? Right? Like that part doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're buying a vehicle to impress somebody, you got it for the wrong reasons and you got the wrong mindset anyway. And most likely you're going to be on the bottom side of the wedge with that. So, like $800, it was awesome. I almost bought it myself just because. Holy crap, that's hot. Oh, my wife is so awesome. All right, 53 minutes into it, 201 people watching with 91 likes. Continue to hit that like button as you come into the live stream. I see we got 201 people, which is a bunch of new people who just showed up. Damn, fresh coffee is an underrated luxury in my life. It's things like when you have to, people are like, dude, you have to enjoy your life sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I drink coffee. I drink nice coffee, good coffee, and I drink whenever I want to drink it. I like coffee, right? And it's sad because sometimes I drink way too much coffee, and you can tell, and it comes out in the videos when I'm really anxious and high strung and talking too fast and all that other stuff. But I love the stuff, and it's great. So few luxuries in life, right? Some people want some other experience. I want to have decent coffee, right? And that's me. Let's see here. Uneducated Economist is an elitist. He has coffee brought to him with a smile. Yeah. Better to not be full. It's definitely not Folgers. No. All right. What is your savings rate? And what do you mean? Like, what am I getting for a savings rate? Like, I don't take positions really in saving kind of accounts. I do have some treasuries though, just to be in the game, but I don't really take position in treasuries or anything like that. Simon is addicted to coffee. I am. I admit that. Uh, Commerce commences on the sea. Uh, the operator is the vessel admiralty. All right, being served a nice cup of coffee is a luxurious one. Yes, it is, Bitcoin Ben. All right, allegedly. All right, a ship is a vessel, and all vehicles are vessels, just like you citizenship. Use snowblower is another way I have saved money. Never deportations. All right, motor vehicle is defined in 18 U.S. Code 31A6. Newer department store snowblowers are junk. You guys are funny. All right. So this was an awesome live stream. We have 198 people watching with 99 likes. Thank you so much for getting it to the 100 like. We just hit there with $5 in super chats because you guys are always so generous with them super chats supporting the Uneducated Economist. We got another 5 minutes here before we hit the hour mark on this video. If you wanted to continue watching, continue to hit that like button. With 198 people watching, we should have it well over 150 likes right now. But if you get it up over, say, 120 in the next 4 or 5 minutes here, we'll continue on live streaming. Otherwise, we will call it a break and come back and discuss something else later. But if you have any questions, let's hit them now. All right. Let's see here. Let me back it up just a little ways. 105 likes. I love it. Okay. Every day I wake up, I pour myself a cup of that rich Folgers aroma. Oh, the best part of waking up. Oh, God. Singing the little jingle, are you? All right. Liked. Okay. We're at 107. Keep going, guys. You're almost there. Yeah. And I think understanding, like, this whole, what is it? But the certification of manufacturing is the DMV given by the manufacturer. So then what? Oh, you guys are talking about owning the sovereign citizen and having the vehicle outright in your name as opposed to having the manufacturer statement of origin kind of thing. All right. Neil, what is it? Neil's Heian Dynasty? What form will the 2K stimmy be in? Crypto or cash? Oh, yeah, like that thing. The idea that it may or may not come. I mean, what you think about it, it was basically a tariff, like, per capita check you're getting, right? It's just like, so we're going to spread out some of these tariff refund money to you guys. Well, what if the Supreme Court deems them illegal? Are you still going to get your stimmy check? All right. What tariffs? I mean, I love this. It's like the idea of a tariff not even being legal yet. Supreme Court hasn't decided on that. And then people are already down to the idea of how we're going to get a stimulus check from it. We don't even know if they're even legal. We may end up finding that it's going to cost us in taxes to pay back for the tariffs that we have already, got to reimburse the companies to. That's insane to think, right? Oh, shoot, spilled a little bit. Good thing I got a towel right here. All right, let's see here. 115 likes, 5 more likes to go, guys. I spike my coffee with amphetamine. Good Lord. Exactly. I need is 15, 17. All I need is 15, 17 days. All right, 113 likes, getting close to 116. I forgot the way around that, but have heard a feasible way before. Coffee is liquid and a stimmy. Based on your yearly income, do you try to save 20 or 30%, etc.? Yeah, see, this is a hard one for me to answer because my income varies so much, right? Like you have to understand, like I have a day job that's pretty consistent, and so if we were to talk about that, then it would be, pretty easy to, give you a, hey, it's a percentage. But like a couple of years ago when lumber was really taking off and, I was getting videos that were getting 20, 30, $40,000, $40,000, 40,000 views a hit, the channel was making quite a few $1,000s a month, like doing quite well. And so when you do that consistently for quite a few months, those years are going to do much better than a year where it's not doing very well. And you take the good with the bad. Like it's not always going to be an awesome month. Some months are better than others, and some years are better than others. So I can't really say, like, over the last 5 years, what my average income would be to how much I'm going to save. I have my expenses very low, right? And I keep them really low. Now, there are some expenses that I have taken on, and in my mind, they are going to be useful return, like a return on my investment. One of them right now is Sarah's going through getting her degree for teaching. Like she's going and taking the classes right now to make that happen. And so for me, like if she can get that degree and advance her career and what it is that she's doing, because she never thought of working at the school or working in the school district and being a teacher's assistant, and all of a sudden she just found like, man, this is a really wonderful thing that she enjoyed and never thought that she would ever have this kind of experience. She wants to advance that and change, and change the entire trajectory of where it was that she was headed. She used to be in like the food service industries, right? You know, bartending, waitressing, cook, catering, all that other stuff. That was like the thing that she had always done. So, and then working grocery at one point too. But now it's just like here she is doing this teacher assistance and she's just absolutely loving it. So for me, like, getting that and paying for that, it's like, man, that's going to have so much return in the future, not only just by, just advancing her skills, not just monetary, but just in psyche too, right? Like, feel better about yourself or have grown and, accomplishing something like getting a degree. So, all right. I read a book called University of Success by Ogmandino. Yeah, I've read some Ogmandino stuff. It said to pay yourself first from each paycheck. So I did 15% from each pay day and have not touched those savings ever. Been over 25 years. See, now that's pretty good. I do something similar. Like when I get paid, almost always I will put a little bit towards something out there. And generally, I will buy like Bitcoin once a week or once a month. Right. And now I'm not trying to advise that for anybody else, but that's something that I've done. Now, also, I have a 401k that I contribute a lot of money to. All right. And now I've only done that just recently to try and make up for past failures to contribute. Right. So I've increased that quite a bit. So in my mind, I save or put away like anywhere from 10 to 25% of my monthly income. Right. But it's not always that. Sometimes like a month might come where I have to pay extra bills or something like that, and I may not deploy anything other than the little bit, or it's actually quite a bit, other than the 401k. Some other months I might buy into, cryptocurrencies or buy some other stocks or buy something else that, that would then contribute to something outside of that, retirement fund from my job. All right, you still can't vote. You have similar privileges and benefits. That's all. Okay. I have this jar on top of my refrigerator. Every time I get paid, I shove a wad full of cash inside of there. Where do you live? Teacher is stressful these days with kids raised by iPad dads. Wow. Yeah. Do Oregon teachers still have awesome retirement benefits? I don't know about awesome retirement benefits comparatively to other ones out there. I really don't know. Um, I mean, they do contribute, a decent amount, in my opinion, to her retirement. And so, like, in that case, I mean, I think it's pretty good. But then again, anytime you ever have anybody contributing money to you is a good thing. So it's just like, to me, any amount is good. No one can do emojis as fast as me. All right. The best seller in the world by Ogmandino. Yeah, the greatest salesman in the world. Greatest, the greatest gift in the world. What was it? All those. The greatest salesman in the world. I read that one. It was pretty good. I had the pack of Ogmandino books. I had the collection of four of them. Greatest salesman in the world. Greatest salesman in the world, part two. The greatest gift in the world, and then the greatest secret in the world. I think those were the three of them. And I think I only read like the greatest salesman in the world. I don't think I ever read the other ones. Maybe part of the greatest secret. I can't remember. It was a long time ago I had those. Is Sarah getting her master's degree? I don't know how far she's going to go. Teachers only profess as one learning has the option to learn or ignore. Do you get a C if you ignore all-nighter? I have a 401k with about 10% of my pay weekly contributed. There's no higher paid person than the salesman. Do you recommend the continue investing in the S&P or to divert to international ETFs or gold or silver? No, that's really like this is another thing when it comes to investing or just, deploying your money into positions. You really have to take this down for yourself and your understanding of the position in which that you are holding and why. Like for me, I don't look to anybody else. The only time I've ever really asked anybody for advice that I took to heart and ran with was the Bitcoin advice I got from Lynn Alden. That was it. Like all the rest of the times I've ever asked anybody about advice and money and how to do whatever, I never really. I mean, I listened and I kind of thought about it, but I never really did anything with that advice other than just hear it. But when Lynn Alden says, no, you got a dollar cost average into Bitcoin for at least 4 years, seems simple enough, right? Yeah, I totally did that and it totally worked, right? So I don't try to like think about like whether or not you should be in a particular investment or not. That's something that you really have to decide for yourself. And when you decide it for yourself, you're going to know the best position that you are taking, how much to put in, when to put it in, and then most importantly, when to get it out, right? Because if you're listening to somebody on what to get into, then you also have to listen to them on when to get out. Like I had a lot of people tell me that or kind of ask me that question when I said, I'm going to step into this particular ETF. And when I said it, people lit up. Like they were like, oh my gosh, you're buying how much? What are you getting into? And I'm like, whoa, this isn't for you guys to use to buy. This was my like own personal thing that I was trying to share. And then I realized that people were following in and jumping into the game as well. And I thought, well, now they have to listen to me to get out. And if I don't tell them, then they're going to lose a bunch of money. And if I don't tell them at the right time, they're going to say, oh, dude, you could have like made so much more or, I lost or whatever. And so like to me, that's not the information that I want to be sharing here on this channel. That's like not the way that I wanted to go. I want to talk about economic theories. I want to understand how it is that I can see these economic theories so that I can better position myself. But when it comes to investing, that's a very personal thing that it comes down to because you're going to have to make the decision on how you're going to lose your money. All right? That's really what it comes down to. And if you're listening to somebody else out there who says, hey, man, I got this great advice on how you can make a bunch of money, and then it goes the other way and you lose the money, that's your fault. And you have to take responsibility for that. And that's a very difficult thing to do if you're relying on somebody else to tell you when to get in and when to get out. So S&P, yeah, I'd put some. I mean, I don't have a problem putting money in the S&P. I do it, like not a lot, but I do. And so, for somebody who's saying I'm putting 100% of my money there, oh, yeah, no, not me, But then again, like I don't put all my money in one spot. That's if you really, really want to make it rich. If you really want to make it rich in this world, then you put all your money in one spot. If you put it all in one spot, then you have that opportunity. But if you diversify, then you can get yourself into a stable position. You may not make a lot of money at it, like, make yourself really rich at it, but you can be very stable in that, certain things happen within the economy that then, throws shockers out there to the world. It doesn't bother you as much because you're not entirely in that one position. And that's the point of it. All right, 192 people watching, 123 likes. Thank you so much. You guys got it up over that 120 thumbs up mark. Let's continue doing this live stream, but go out there and share this video with your Facebook and your ex-followers and everybody else. I remember when I had a job that allowed me to pay myself early if I wanted to. Well, you can still get payroll advancements and stuff like that. There's a lot of companies that allow draws and, getting the money before you actually get paid. But I remember I went to an employer one time and they said, "When do you want to get paid?" And I said, "I want to get paid on payday." When is it? And they said, well, we pay on on the 30th, but you can get paid on, like on the 7th and the 15th and whatever. You can take these draws out if you want of your check. So did you want to get paid every other week or what? I said, no, just pay me once a month. And the guy was like, "You just want to get paid once a month?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just pay me once a month. I don't, I'm not so limited that I need to have this weekly pay. Like that's not me. I can get paid once a month." And he was just like, "Wow, okay, I've never had anybody say that before." And I thought, "Really?" Never, not once. And he was just like, "No, these guys are usually hitting me up every week for pay." It was when I was working construction. And I thought that was pretty funny. And later on, I'm talking about it, and the guy says, "Oh yeah, no, I get a draw once a week." He was just like, "Otherwise, I'm broke by the end of by the following week." And I thought, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. I get paid 12 times a year." And he looked at me and he was just like, "Holy crap!" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's it. I get paid 12 times a year, once a month." You know. And that just blew him away. Like he couldn't imagine even operating in such fashions. And this is really, I mean, it comes down to mindsets of the people. Of course, that was when I was making more money. All right. I've yet to see one person on YouTube say, "Okay, this week put 30 pound to this, 30 to that, etc." Actually do a plan and share the wealth. I see them doing courses, etc. Well, Crosshatch, I think what you're doing is you're actually pushing too much expectation of the video content. Like you're pushing too much of an expectation out there for people to deliver to you, and with that is going to be resulting in a counterbalancing of the opposite of what it is that you want. See, I think like instead of asking the question, what is it that I should put my money to? I think the question should be is how do I process information so I know how to deal with my money? Right? Because again, like if you're watching a particular YouTuber who is telling you exactly like take $30 and put it into this particular ETF and then take 30% or what, and you're doing that, what you are going to find is that particular individual, it may work out incredibly well for the position that they take. But then you may not find it working out incredibly well for what it is that you wanted it to be. Like for them, they might be just like, "No, I got my 8% yearly return on it and it worked out really well." Where somebody else was just like, "Well, I was hoping for a a weekly payment or something like that, and not just a return or a speculative return. And so a lot of people have to have like an understanding of what it is that they want from the investment itself. Like, do you want it to just go up in value, or do you want it to pay you? That's two different things. Like, one's an investment and one's a speculation. A lot of times people just want a speculation, but really when you think deep down inside, if they really were to have their position that they want, they would love to have a monthly income that is beyond that of their occupation. That's really what they want. But since most people are kind of somewhat single-minded to it, that says I need to buy something that goes up in value, as opposed to buying something that pays me. And in that sense, like, that would be the better position for a lot of people to be in. And you can't necessarily do that with the position 30% of your monthly payment at a time, right? Of your paycheck. You have to save up over time and then find a position in which that you can take that, get into that rental property or something like that. That's what I guess what I'm saying by it is just like, if you're following a YouTuber who's telling you to do that, I think you are setting yourself up, not necessarily for failure, because you could do actually quite well if he gives you the right information, but you're essentially setting yourself up for not being independent. You are very dependent, right? And that's kind of the opposite of what you are looking like. At least it's the opposite of what I would be looking for by trying to acquire more abundance, right? Is I'm looking for that independence. But if you're getting it by being dependent on somebody else, then that's kind of the opposite of what it is that you were looking for. In the example of the U.S. family once being able to live off of one person, has China experienced that in the past 30 years in a similar way or different, even though they have grown in prosperity? Well, I don't. The experiences in which that you have a rise of an industrious people, I don't think is going to look necessarily exactly the same for all these nations. And so for here in the United States, where we had all these wonderful houses and white picket fences and the family traditional thing that was happening there, that was the experience that we got here in the United States as being the American society. Like, China's different. They have a whole different culture that's taken place over there. And so to think like, well, they had a rise of this manufacturer, and so one of them are going to be able to provide the income for the entire household. It's not like their society or their family structures or anything else was even like that of the United States, nor did they have the opportunities like we had here in the United States with just our environment, like the natural resources that were so abundant across the nation in different places that you could take advantage of those natural resources. These sort of things are different from country to country to country, right? And so to think like, well, if they have the manufacturing power, then that means that they have a single family or a single family income being enough to provide for the entire household. That's not necessarily like I don't think that's like a fair equation to make. Hey, it's not. It doesn't necessarily work that way here in the United States. Now, you can think about in the fashion that if you have a nation that is rising as a manufacturing powerhouse and they are producing and selling that stuff out there to the world, you can imagine that the people inside of that nation are going to experience an elevated standard of living and an experience of luxury, because that's essentially what happens when you have new money pouring in. Now, what that looks like inside of that particular society will be different comparatively to their culture. Everything is different, and just even the way they even build houses or live in houses or anything like that, it's going to be completely different from nation to nation. But it's just the understanding that if you rise as a manufacturer and you get new money in, that new money is going to eventually start pouring into luxuries, and that experience into luxuries is going to start separating the rich from the poor. That's the key to it. The symptoms or the evidence of that are things like the single family or the single income family. Does that all make sense? am sorry, healthcare should be a right, not a privilege. No, I don't think so, Kirk. I mean, I understand that's what you're saying, but ultimately that's very incorrect, because what you are saying is that somebody should go out there, spend time, effort, energy, learning the knowledge of how it is that they should be able to heal somebody, and then not get any benefit from that. And then on top of that, somebody who did not take care of themselves because they didn't understand that they had to remain healthy within their life is going to depend on somebody who has taken time, effort, and energy to learn how to heal somebody or to save somebody, and then deploy that effort into somebody who doesn't take any responsibility for themselves. And this is what essentially forcing that health care to be. Right? Now, if an individual out there truly had it within them that they wanted to be somebody who can be a healer, a doctor, who wanted to benefit the people out there from with that, has every ability to go out there and do it. Right? And at the same time, the people have every responsibility for themselves to take care of themselves, to eat healthy, exercise, lay off the drugs and drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. Like, they have every responsibility for that. Now, could we form a society that says, hey man, is there a way that we can match these two? I imagine there's probably something out there, some way. But to force it upon the people out there that says you have to go out there and take time, effort, energy to learn something and then not profit from it. How much effort are you really going to put into that? I mean, unless you really, really, really are passionate about that particular thing. Most people do it because they're going to have a decent life because of it. Right? Why else would you do it? And now, if you're going to not have a decent life, or you're going to be forced into providing something that may not have a return that's of equal proportion to what it is that everybody else is doing out there, then most likely you're probably not going to put the great effort into it, are you? All right. Healthcare isn't a right, it's a privilege by far. All right? It's a privilege by far. And those who have the money get the highest privilege for it. Those who have taken care of themselves, for the most part, get to save a lot of money. You have every right to take care of yourself, but you don't have every right to demand somebody else take care of you or save you. And that's sad, I get it, but it's true. Exactly, Simon. Responsibility and liberty correlate 1-to-1. Simon, did you take the COVID vaccine? You know, I've already answered that question in the past, and I don't really like talking about what it is that I do for my own personal medical, issues and stuff like that. Like, if I'm willing to share it, then I'll share it. But when it comes to stuff like that, like, it's nobody else's responsibility, or nobody else's, not only is it not their responsibility, but then it's none of their business. And I remember at one point that I'm standing behind the counter at work, and there's a customer who is grilling every single person and asking them if they have been vaccinated. And when it came to me, right, and he looked at me, and I straight up said, I do not talk about my medical, anything. I don't talk about my medical. And he knew right then the answer, right? That whole thing was such a, I don't even know how to even describe it at this point, because I remember, this is so funny. Like, I don't know why I brought this up. Okay, so we had this cleaning regimen at work, right? Every 20 minutes we had to go and wipe down the computers and wipe down the phones and wipe down all this stuff. There was this big list of things that we had to go and wipe down, the door handles and all these other things, right? And I'm like, what the hell are we doing, guys? I said, what's the point of this? And they're like, oh, we got to do this. This is for safety reasons. And I'm like, you do realize we have like hundreds of thousands of products in this store that people are touching every day. Are we going and cleaning up all those things too? Right? I mean, it's just like, here we're doing this superficial cleaning down of the mask and the phones. Meanwhile, customers are walking through the store touching every single item. Okay, yeah, I see. When it came to my turn, I just ignored it. I didn't even do it. And they were like, dude, you have to do this. This is your job. So I would grab the phone and I would grab the rag and I'd do my job, guys, making sure thorough job on this phone. That one's clean. Don't worry about COVID on that one. All right. Nobody cares now. All gone. Not a single pipe. I see people, walking in with the mask. They have some belief in it. Maybe they're sick themselves. I don't know. But nobody cares. Nobody cares about wiping the counters down. Nobody cares about, anything. Nobody cares. So what was the point? What was the point of all that calling of the cops and saying these people aren't wearing masks and all this social distancing and all that other stuff? It's all for naught now. It's not like COVID went away, right? It's not like it went away. It's still here. Different strains of it and all the vaccines and all the other stuff is still there, and people are not caring one little bit about it. It's kind of like it went out the window with like firing Jerome Powell and Lisa Cook. Just same window. They just fly out that window and then they never see you, never to return again, like a homing pigeon that never comes home, and just flies away and that's it, gone. At the same time, Simon, I think if we are going to send $40 billion over to Argentina, then we should probably be able to afford health care for the United States citizens. Yeah. Yeah, but you also have to understand that the point of the United States isn't to bring money home, and it isn't to take care of the people, and it isn't to do any of that stuff. It's to create a consumer here. And ultimately, getting money out of the United States is a bigger deal than trying to deal with the people here in the United States themselves, as providing them with a better condition. Yeah. I understand that people think it would be better to do things, but it's not, they don't do the right thing. That's not something that's in their wheelhouse of doing. They don't do the right thing. What they do is they carry the system on, and part of the system is about keeping the money flowing to those who are in demand for it due to the debt issuance that they have created. And by having a debt created in dollars that is outside of the United States, the main goal of the United States is to get the dollars out of the United States in order to deal with the fact that there is dollar demand that is existing that is not here in the United States. That's the point. If they don't deal with that, the dollar strengthens and it ruins our economy. They have to provide the dollars to the world. Mm-hmm. And that's part of it. People say, I get all mad at Argentina for getting this money. And it's just that's how they work it. And get the dollars out of here. It's even worse when they just give it away to some stupid organization who just absolutely wastes the money on the most ridiculous things in the entire world. If you can imagine that is the best way for them to get the money out, then that's why they do it. It makes it so much it doesn't make sense when they hand it to people who are stupid with the money. But if you think, okay, well, if they hand them that money and then they go and they spend that money on just random stuff out there, it starts filling the sluices with money. And that's the point. They gave it to somebody who is responsible, who would sit in some bank account and never go out there and start chasing the goods and services. All right? If they gave it to somebody who is responsible, it wouldn't do its job. And its job is to get out there and start filling in the sluices so that it can start dealing with the dollar-denominated debts. It's not going to happen if somebody is responsible with it. Thank you, Infamous NYC, for the $5. U.S. spends trillions on health care and social programs, and we're broke. This X is right. Is just I want it for free socialism, marked as virtue signal. Yeah. Federal Reserve notes will soon be used for wallpaper. You should go into the Workers Bar and Grill in Astoria because they literally have dollars taped to the wall as almost as if it's now wallpaper. Like literally, people will sign their names, like where they're from and stuff, and they'll tape a dollar to the wall. And there's like hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds of them, all along one particular wall, so it covers the entire wall. And then it's starting to spread onto the other walls as well. So yeah, not will be soon be used for wallpaper. It's now being used for wallpaper. All right, just go to the Workers. It's happening there. Uh, most people run away from that COVID topic. Simon had no problem speaking his mind. That's real. Well, the thing is like when you realize that the Federal Reserve was in desperate need for opportunistic reflation. I don't know how many people remember that one, but opportunistic reflation was something that they were needing. In fact, let's just I just love it. You guys heard it before, but let's read it again, right? Coming from Lael Brainerd. All right, let me see if I can bring it up here. Brainerd. All right. So this is coming from prior to COVID. And this is how I know that COVID was a scam, right? It was essentially a scam to cover up the failure of the monetary system. And the COVID induced recession was really a recession that had COVID overlapping it. So they blamed the recession on COVID and had the unusual and exigent circumstances of COVID to be able to deploy stimulus packages that they would never have been able to use before without the unusual and exigent circumstances of COVID. So prior to that, the Fed was in a position in which that they were desperate for inflation. They were screwed bad. Low inflation, low interest rates, too close to the lower bound of zero, low neutral interest rate, major problem. Lael Brainerd had this to say on, let me get the date, May 16th, 2019. So this is prior to COVID. It says, of course, it is not entirely clear how to move underlying trend inflation smoothly to our target and on a sustained basis in the presence of a very flat Phillips curve. So now, if you had read the speech before, she was talking about a very low inflation expectation. In fact, okay, hold on, let me get, okay, there it is, back up. All right. One possibility we might refer to as, quote, opportunistic inflation would be to take advantage of a modest increase in actual inflation to demonstrate to the public our commitment to our inflation goal on a symmetric basis. For example, and this is so good, suppose that an unexpected increase in core input price inflation drove overall inflation moderately above 2% for a couple of years. The Federal Reserve could use that opportunity to communicate that mild overshooting of inflation is consistent with our goals and align policy with the statement. Such an approach could help demonstrate to the public that the committee is serious about achieving its 2% inflation objective on a sustained basis. Point being, they were looking for an opportunistic reflation, right? And to take advantage of a modest increase of actual inflation. Take advantage of an increase in inflation. For example, suppose that an unexpected increase in core input price inflation drove overall inflation modestly above 2% for a couple of years. Bang, the Fed got exactly what it is that they were looking for. Now, a lot of people said, no, they lost control and COVID was way more than they needed and all this other stuff. Yeah, it might have been way more than what they were anticipating on using or dealing with, but it doesn't take away from the fact that they achieved their goals with it. That's the point of it. COVID was a total benefit to the Federal Reserve. It drove inflation higher, modestly above 2% for some time, modestly above 2%, right? But ultimately, that's what they were needing in order to raise the neutral interest rate and get it off the lower bound of zero. If you go and read some of their other speeches, you can totally see that within their statements. So knowing that back in 2019 that they were looking for opportunistic reflation, like how is it that the inflation was a bad thing for them is beyond me when they straight up stated that's what they were looking for and wanted. For example, a modest increase, unexpected even, modest increase in inflation. Totally worked to their advantage. That's why everybody who is under the impression that the Fed lost control of inflation literally gave effort and benefit and power to the Fed. They were looking for opportunistic reflation, and everybody says it's the Fed's fault for causing inflation. That was their opportunity. You gave it. It was like that was the opportunity they were looking for. Why not compensate the doctors, healthcare, etc., incentives, healthcare choices, but make things situational when someone gets sick, an accident, and they and their families don't have enough to get into debt? I go to the gym daily, never got a vaccine. I was forced. My whole family got vaccinated. I told them they were going to grow a third eye, but the only thing that happened was metal was sticking in their heart and injection site area for a while. Huh. Kirk, I think coerced is the more correct term in your case. Yeah. 43 years old and have 1 year old. I need my career. I was forced. Again, coerced. Right. Like, are they forced to keep you hired there? Right? But you're forced to take the vaccination. But they're not forced to keep you hired. That's interesting. So I don't think that was a force. You were coerced. And that sucks because sometimes we don't feel like we have a choice in the matter, but we really do. And although we don't want to deal with the consequences of a lot of our fear and anxiety of what could be coming from the fact that we have a secured income that provides us with a life and we don't want to give that up, and so therefore we feel like we're forced, we were essentially coerced, threatened. All right? That's why it's very important to be able to live independently of that source of income. Like even I myself, I'm dependent on my day job. I'm somewhat dependent on YouTube. I'm also dependent on bingo. I'm also dependent on all the other things that I'm doing out there to try and make the income, but I'm not necessarily dependent on one single thing. But I am dependent on all of them. But if one single thing was to back out, it would be hard. It would be difficult for me to operate, but would it be the end of the world? No. Right? And that's ultimately the point, is that nothing is guaranteed. They're not forced to keep you hired, and you're not forced to work for them. You choose to, and they choose to. Bingo and bacon, winning combination. Yeah. All right. How long do we want to keep going, guys? We're 146 likes into it with 171 people watching. Lucky my employer didn't even ask. I would have refused regardless. I could have not gotten relicensed. Yeah. And see, again, it's just like the unfortunate circumstances in which, like, this is, again, like where I feel being of the anarchist mindset is really kind of a benefit in a lot of ways. It's that, it can hold you back in a lot of ways too. But, for example, the asking for permission for anything at all is not something that I typically want to do. And so when somebody says, well, you have to go and get this particular permit, or you have to get licensed, or you have to do something of that nature, and I think to myself, well, wait a minute here. What am I asking for permission to do? right? And at some point, can you revoke that permission? Can you take it away? And if you do, what happens to my life if you do take it away? Because I'm not necessarily going to ask for permission if it's something that's going to be revoked. Like, that's not a position I want to put myself into. And if I do, I want to also understand that at any given moment, I may have to let go of everything that's happened, right? It's hard for people who want to build a career off of it. I want to be a truck driver. You get a CDL, right? Commercial driver's license. Now you're subject to their rules, to, a lot of their, you know, whatever, their expectations of you. And in that sense, you're trading that security. You're trading, the security of the job for the freedom of telling them to go F off when when they're asking you for something. That difference inside of it, I think a lot of times people say, I don't have any choice in this, but that's not true. You do have a choice in it. And you think, well, if I give up some of this security, I can have some of this benefit from it. Or if I give up some of this freedom, I can have some of this benefit from it and get the security. And then in turn on that, you say, well, now I'm forced. Well, yeah, if you want to keep the security, I guess there is. But if you wanted the freedom, that was always there. But freedom isn't cheap. Freedom isn't easy. Freedom isn't always like the feeling of security either. I don't blame you for not seeing years into the future to have avoided such a situation, but I still think worse is the right term. Yeah, and I agree, Kirk. Like, I sympathize with you. Like, I watched a lot of people who ran right out and got vaccinated because they didn't want to lose their job. And, I saw a few other people who were like, well, I'm willing to lose my job. I don't know what to say. Like those people who said, oh, no, I'm willing to lose my job. I'm willing to, I might, I have a belief that I am not going to compromise on, and there's nobody out there who's going to get me to do that. Right? And once you step into that realm and you stick to it, you actually have the freedom. And you may not have the security, though. Rarely do those two go hand in hand. Right? Very rarely. A salty framer said he lost his job. All right, I don't think gold is associated with the dollar whatsoever anymore. Well, there you go, deplorable. Look at it differently anyway. You should look at it as a completely different thing. Gold and dollars are not like like they can be two separate things that rise together, The response to COVID was a big compliance test. Most received a passing score. I mean, to me, COVID wasn't a compliance test. It was a shutting down and breaking of the supply chain. And there's no way that you would have been able to do it to the magnitude that they did without a dramatic, reason. Like, if you had a major war taking place, if you had a huge natural disaster, but that COVID pandemic was absolutely perfect. Stay home. Don't go to work. Don't manufacture. Don't distribute. Here's a stimulus check. Go out there and clear the shelves out. What do we get? Opportunistic reflation. That's the point. That was the whole point. It wasn't like all this government control and all that other stuff. I mean, yeah, that was part of it, and I'm not trying to deny that was a major part of it. But the ultimate reasoning behind it was for exactly what it is that I've been saying. They were too close to the lower bound of zero with the neutral interest rate. They needed inflation desperately bad, and there was no better way of doing it than to sever the supply chain. They tried to do it with just money printer with the quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and a 4, and it failed. We just learned this from Lael Brainerd in 2019, that even after all that money printer, they were still looking for opportunistic reflation. They weren't going to get it unless they broke the supply chain. There's no way that they could just break the supply chain without telling everybody to stay home. Here's a stimulus check. Clear the shelves. Do not produce. Do not distribute. Now we have a broken supply chain, elevated inflation, and if we can keep that broken from now on, we can keep the elevated inflation expectations going, which will raise the neutral interest rate, and that's the position that we now hold today with monetary policy. Broke the supply chain and keep it broken. Break it with COVID, keep it broken with war, keep it broken with credible threats of tariffs, keep it broken with Game Plan 2, whatever the hell that is. You know, it's all about keeping the supply chain broken so that they can continue on with the elevated inflation expectation to continue to pull the neutral interest rate higher. It's all about adjusting of the neutral interest rate, or the expectations of the people to adjust the neutral interest rate, because that moving of the neutral interest rate actually has an impact on the economy that restricts or causes it to be more accommodating or less restrictive. If that neutral interest rate can rise on a credible threat of tariffs and the Fed funds rate is lowered, then they get less restrictive as time goes on, less restrictive than more people than have ever realized was taking place. And if it continues onward, we are eventually going to find ourselves with the neutral interest rate surpassing the Fed funds rate, even though the Fed hasn't lowered them that much. Maybe. We don't know. We're going to have to see. But that's what I'm looking at when it comes to monetary policy, and very few people see it this way. Very, very few. But this is the communication coming from the Fed itself. I've internalized it and then broke it down from a working class point of view, and I've delivered it in this fashion. Very few people get it, very few people see it, and nobody's going to understand it when it's actually happening until it's too late. Thank you so much, T Flats, for the $7.99. Was COVID stimulus like Cantillon effect in reverse, starting bottom up and QE is top to bottom? Just got here now in the chat. Was COVID stimulus like a Cantillon effect in reverse? Well, I mean, I think like what ended up happening during COVID, a lot of people saw as like a reversal to inequality, but that's not really the case. It was more of just a cover up to the inequality that was taking place, because a bunch of stimulus checks went out and that ended up into the household savings, which made the inequality look like it shrank some, because that household savings had shot up so much with all the stimulus checks being deployed. But that was only a matter of time before the stimulus checks savings was spent. And once it is spent, where does it go? All right, right up to the top. So it wasn't a reversal of the Cantillon effect. It gave the appearance that there was a slowdown in the inequality, but ultimately what it had done is it sent the Cantillon effect on a rocket ship, because once the money was deployed into the economy, it shot up to the rich, and the rich got richer, and the poor are now suffering the consequences of it. So the Cantillon effect was actually was exasperated by the COVID pandemic and the stimulus checks that were issued by it. Anytime you ever increase the money, if you increase the money, the new debt issuance, that is going to create separation between the rich and the poor, right? It's going to create the inequality, because a certain group is going to end up with it and the majority of the people won't. The only reversal to the Cantillon effect is going to be a slowdown, or a reversal, not even a slowdown, a reversal in debt issuance and the lowering of the standard of living. That's the only thing that would reverse the Cantillon effect. And both of those things would be incredibly painful. So painful for the people to experience. Thank you for being here too. What was it? T Flats, was it? Yeah, T Flats. Thank you so much. All right. 20 trillion in new investment in America raises our GDP if invested in infrastructure, and it is. Yeah. You don't get nearly as much in investing you don't get as much out of GDP investing when you're like, how do I say this? When you have debt issuance to the size that we do, with an interest payment of the magnitude that it is, Like once the debt to GDP has, has reached to the level that it is right now, for every issuance of debt that used to bring in a reasonable amount of GDP, it has gone so low now that the amount of debt issuance that actually increases the GDP is such an insignificant amount comparatively to where it was that it takes like an insane amount for it to be actually accommodating to or beneficial to the economy. Like at this point, we're just past the point of no return. The debt issuance isn't going to really do us that much better, right? No matter where we go with it. And even going into, you have to think, even if you were to go into manufacturing and the assembly of a manufacturing plants, it's not going to be competitive to the rest of the world. So if you want that manufacturing plant to continue, then you have to give it subsidies or you have to do some sort of government control to keep its existence. The moment that government gets out of the way, boom, it's gone. Because it should never exist in the first place. Because it's a malinvestment. Right? Because if it was a real profitable manufacturing plant, it would be here and not over there somewhere. All right. T flows with the 299. The rich got richer or the money just decayed more. No, the concentration of wealth is really more of the way to look at it. Like if the poor if the okay, if the poor don't have it, who does? Right? If the poor doesn't have it, who does? Like if you hand the poor, it's like, here's $1,000, go do something with it. And the poor is just like, woohoo. And they come back and they're like, hey, what'd you do with the $1,000? They're like, well, I went to the bar, I bought a fishing pole, I, blew the rest on, whatever gambling, and now I don't have it. Well, where do you think it went? Like if they don't have it, where did it go? Right? Now it sits somewhere, and generally it's at the top. So no matter what ends up happening, if you increase the money supply, what you are going to do is you are going to increase the opportunity for a concentration of wealth into the hands of just a few. And the inequality gets worse. Because again, like just look at the thumbnail of this video, there's really only two classes, the working class and the investor. And now working class paycheck to paycheck who doesn't deploy anything into the stock market, into an investment of some sort, is going to sit there wondering how come it is their paycheck doesn't make it and how come it's getting more difficult by the month. Now, when you look at those who have invested, their assets seem to be growing and they're singing like, the happy dance and going, well, if you had deployed some money into the stock market or cryptos or real estate or doing something out there instead of depending on your paycheck to paycheck job, then you would be advancing. But this is the unfortunate circumstances that we are now in. This is why the K-shaped recovery is so prominent right now. I mean, look at all the links that I left down in the description. They're just like a zillion different people who are talking about this K-shaped recovery, but very few people will bring up the Cantillon effect and the reason why it's happening. Right? Industrious people moving into luxuries. That's it. That's what happened. Uh-huh. Howdy you we, doing some renovations on my new duplex while listening to the premier monetary and economist channel or economics channel. Well, thank you, Angry Capitalist. I really appreciate you being here and listening in on the background while doing your work. All right, not sure what that even is. I am currently on a pay as you earn program. I have known many people who just never needed a house. I heard of people who were buying houses and renting apartments. Like not renting out apartments, they were renting an apartment and buying real estate. you know? VA healthcare is a huge benefit between retiring at 50 and Medicare at 65. It will keep you alive. Student loans. I gotta feed the pond fish. Be right back. All righty, all nighter. Let me cruise up here and see if there's any questions, anything you want me to go over, talk about, cover, rehash. All right, greetings from Detroit. Well, greetings back to Detroit. XRP to the moon soon. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge XRP fan, but a lot of people are. I mean, I do own some XRP, so it's not like I'm not in the game, but I do have a little bit, and I don't really buy that much of it. Sorry, stupid question. After you get back in the workforce, I recommend getting qualified for a home. You know, we got a bunch of Michiganders in the chat. Is that what you guys call yourselves, Michiganders? All right. Your long-term opinion on cryptos? What is your long-term opinion of cryptocurrencies? I mean, for me personally, I don't think they're going anywhere and they're only getting more popular. So if you can imagine like Bitcoin being like the cryptocurrencies of all cryptocurrencies, considering its size, its network, its, everything about it, the idea of that going away or being put back in the box, like that's not happening. It's out, it's moving, it's going to happen. And so it's only going to grow more prevalent and more useful going into the future. And as people say, oh, they'll just make it illegal. It's the funniest thing that I've ever heard, because it's only getting harder and harder and harder for that to happen. And they're doing the exact opposite. They're doing things that are making it more legal, right? More, accepted into the institutional investments and stuff like that. So the idea that they're going to make it illegal is doing the exact opposite of that. It's going the exact opposite way. They're making regulations and everything else for it. So in that sense, it's most likely not going to go away. And I even had a guy who told me the other day, he's like, yeah, well, they can hack anything. And I'm like, that's what's holding you back? Well, I guess, but don't you think that with the entire world, like, after it, they would have done it, and I mean, whatever. I guess there is still the possibility with quantum computing and all that other stuff, but my concern over it is really low. And then my expectation of it is even less than that. So, it's like whatever happens, it happens. I'm not that concerned about it. If cryptocurrencies like just absolutely just one day just disappear and they're gone, then I would assume that gold and silver would probably do quite well in that environment. And I'm holding in those positions too, so. All right. Going on to the 2 hour mark. Are we going to stick it around for a little while longer or are we done? What time is it? Noon. We're noon o'clock. We just still don't know who Satoshi Makimoto is. Lynn Alden says buy Bitcoin, hold 4 years. That's all I need to know. Yeah, that's pretty much, I mean, that was the recommendation I got when I asked her. What do you mean, Neil? You have had bad times in the past 5 years. What about 20 years before that? I have a family that I created too early, and I have already gone through multiple houses. Let's keep her running. What do you think will Litecoin will go to 1,000 plus possible? Oh, yeah, I don't try and predict what it is that a cryptocurrency is going to go to. Like I I own quite a bit of Litecoin from over the years of just dollar cost averaging into different cryptocurrencies. And I really like Charlie Lee and the things that he had to say. A lot of people don't. They disagree with it. He sold off all his Litecoin when it ran up to its all-time highs. To me, that's the smartest damn move in the entire world, to get out when it's at its all-time highs, only to use that to continue to advance his programs and the things that he is doing. To me, that was a very smart move, and I don't hold that against him. But as far as like a price prediction inside of Bitcoin, I don't even attempt to do that. I'm sorry, bro. I wish I could. T Flats with the 299. With U.S. bonds, will China keep buying them? Absolutely, they will. Absolutely, they will. It's because it's the safest liquid asset in the entire globe. Now, what I find very interesting is that there is a lot of other nations who are actually starting the sale of sovereign debt in Chinese yuan. So, in a sense, like there is the deployment of the yuan into the world currencies or world reserve currency aspect. doing international trades, and the idea of a foreign nation outside of China writing a debt that is due in Chinese yuan, I think that's pretty interesting to keep a focus on. Like, it's not to a level that is really even concerning. It's pretty insignificant. But the idea of foreign nations that are writing debts that are due in dollars, that is quite overwhelming. Like, that is huge and it's magnificent and it's like not going to go anywhere soon. So as far as like being in the safest, most liquid market in the entire world, all these nations are going to hold US dollars. And if they're going to hold US dollars, they're going to do it in treasuries, because if you're holding US dollars, you're holding something that doesn't have a return. But US treasuries can act like US dollars, can perform like a US dollar, and it pays a yield. So most likely, unless the nation is trying to get into cash to pay their own dollar denominated debts, they're going to hold their cash positions inside of US treasuries. And when they start to collect a cash position again, they're going to move into US treasuries. So the more that you find like stablecoin issuance, those people are going to be getting into U.S. Treasuries, to back the stable coins. So in a lot of ways, there's going to be demand for U.S. Treasuries going into the future, especially if it's a stablecoin issuance that is going to be like kind of the big revolution going into the future with currencies. If you have a lot of stablecoin issuance and they're going to have rules and regulations on what it is that you can back that stablecoin with, and U.S. Treasuries being one of them, that's going to be a profound, consumer of U.S. Treasuries. Right? And if China wants to play in that game as well, then they're going to be in the U.S. Treasuries just as much as everybody else is. Good times, isn't it? I consider ironwork. I got me some of that. What is it? Iroca's blood in me?
Hey, Dad.
Yes, sir.
Luna's dying without you.
She's doing without my dying without me?
Yeah.
What's up, Loons? Can you get up here? Hi. Can you guys hear the loony dogs?
Yep.
All right. Well, I've been at it for 2 hours, so I'll probably be calling it quits here soon.
Okay.
All righty, bud. All right. I thought so too with stable coins and bonds. Yeah, well, I think Myron just recently did a speech on this. Is why I need to get into to members only live streams here and start doing some of those. We need to start breaking down some of these speeches that have been given by the Fed just recently, and that was one of them. Myron was talking about the stable coins and stablecoin issuance, and I believe that he was referring to the purchasing of U.S. Treasuries to back most of these things. And so when you think about that being a huge buyer, if that really starts to become prevalent, like there's more people issuing out stable coins, and if they're going to be issuing out stable coins, they're going to be a buyer of US Treasuries. Well, if that news is out there, like that's the market perception, then they are going to start trying to advance or try to front run that stablecoin purchasing of treasuries. So basically buy them up before the stable coins are issued, so that way when the stable coins are buying them, they'll have somebody to sell them to, right? All right. How's your coffee? It's almost gone. All right. Zcash is about to pass 600. Crazy speculation on not very private coin. Build a house cheaper than the interest on a 50-year loan. Tough to type with wet hands. I'm encouraging my kids to live with me while they buy and rent out houses. Yeah, that's a good move right there. Deplorable. That's kind of something that I think I'm probably going to do myself. Invest in Cash App and Planeter now. All right. What kind of dog is that? Luna is a very odd mixed breed of husky, shepherd. I'm not positive, but I think she's got coyote in her. And it's not like, I mean, a lot of her features and stuff have that coyote, but it's a lot of her, more of her demeanor in the way that she acts. Like, she is a hunter and a half. Like if anything is moving or running or whatever, she's on it. She caught a rat, she's caught a possum, she's caught all these things out here in the yard. And like for the most part, we don't even let her off the leash. Like we keep her on the leash because she runs off. She will not come back. She doesn't listen. She is just a like half feral kind of dog. Like she's willing to go. And then like some of this her behavior when you come home, like I've seen dogs get zoomies before, but I've never seen a dog get the zoomies like Luna does. Like she loses her mind. She will bounce and jump and yip and hype, and just make all kinds of noise and run and jump off of things and just lose her nugget. And I've never quite seen it on a level like she does. And so I'm almost assuming that must be some sort of wild like instincts, kind of like regrouping of the pack or something, and then she loses her mind in that kind of fashion. But yeah, she's really fun. She's quite a bit to handle, high strung, but she's a good dog. I like her. Uh, have you seen a blue heeler zoomies? You probably got Coyote. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's like, I mean, at least like you can kind of see it in her color and a lot in her facial features. It's just she has a lot of that going on. All right, why do dogs run in circles? It's an easier than squares. Shepherds can be hyper, yeah. I got a border collie and a black mouth cur. My cigarettes keep me in shape. Luna, that's a sweet dog right there. Yep, all-nighters matter. All right, a few times. T Flats with the 299. I'm in my 20s, so thank you, UE, for the knowledge. Wow, T Flats, thank you so much. I wish I had the I wish I had it in me to study economics to the level that I am now when I was in my 20s. And I feel like if I had, I would have been doing so much better with my life. I would have been able to position myself in a way that I would not have experienced a lot of the deterioration that I did. But for me, I guess I had to learn like that deterioration that I experienced with the alcoholism and all that other stuff. I think that was a lesson that I needed to learn. Like there was something going on inside of me that was, you know, forcing me to go that direction, or leading me in that direction, I should say. And how it is that I was able to figure that out, I don't think I ever would have been as successful or useful today if I hadn't gone through that experience. So again, like I wish I had the experience at 20 years old, or at least the idea of studying economics to the level that we are here on this channel, like T Flats is doing, because then I probably wouldn't have needed to go through the hellish experience I did in order to achieve the level that I am today. You know, like never just go right for the good stuff instead of having to figure it out because of the bad. All right, I recently got off the booze. Well, good for you. Good for you, John. Yeah, I'm 36 and still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Yeah, well, I'm 50 and still trying to figure that out. But I think this is it. Like, I really enjoy the whole economics thing. Studying economics, sharing the view, doing the whole, idea of like what it is that I can advance myself with YouTube or speaking engagements or lessons or books or whatever it is that's going on. Like the lessons that I'm learning here on YouTube, even by doing these live streams as regularly as I do, I feel is giving me the ability to maybe able to present myself on stage at any given moment, like just to show up and just be able to just start delivering information right off the cuff without having to think or research or take notes or any of that other stuff. And being out here regularly on YouTube doing this live streams, I think is what's given me the skills and the ability to do something like that. So even the idea of doing like radio shows where you have live on the air, no time for stopping or slowing down or leaving dead airspace or something like that. Being in the kind of energy or the ability to continuously speak so that the airwaves are always filled, that's not easy to do. And it takes practice and time to eventually get to that point. And that's kind of what I've been doing here on this channel. So I don't know, maybe someday I'll end up on the radio because of it. Which I think is kind of odd because the radio is so like archaic now, and so like who listens to the radio. All right, many of us still figuring it out. Keep moving forward and you will get to your destination. All right. Yeah, thank you, Big Hill. All right, this better be at Simon, you're not getting younger. Don't start to grow up until 38. Been great since then, now at 44. Yeah. I'm 57 and still don't know what I want from life. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, know early. Get started early on what it is that you want. You're not going to get any younger, right? Like, I think about it. I'm 50 years old. Well, I'm 49. I'm going to be 50 years old here, this coming year. And that's not like a whole lot of, like, there's a lot of years left, but it's not like there's a lot of years left. From the time that I was 18 to this point, and I think about all the things that I have accomplished and done in my life, and I'm thinking, man, I've done a lot of cool stuff. But man, what a lot of wasted years too. You know? And if I had gone for it in the earlier years, some of the things that I really wanted in life, I would have been able to experience and done so much more. Right? Like you only got one life to live. What are we waiting for? It's time to go for it now. And for a lot of people out there, I think, waiting for situations or conditions or something to get better or different or something like that, when they can just realize, man, you can just do that now. You can just step up and change everything about the way you're doing it today, right now. And that's very difficult for a lot of people because they say, oh man, consequences to pay for that. But really, it comes down to your imagination. Like, what was it that you have going on in your imagination that you would really want that is not occurring today? Live in that imagination and watch for the opportunities to start presenting themselves because they will. And if you get scared and you run from it, then you're going to find that you will always find opportunities running from you, right? Because the moment that it steps up and it says, hey, here's an opportunity, you're going to feel the fear and anxiety like you have never felt before. And that is what you need to lean into. That's where the magic is found. That's where it happens. Because if you avoid that part of it, then you're avoiding the opportunity. That's all that really comes down to it. Just put it in your imagination and look for the opportunities to present themselves. All right, the best time to be happy in the future is to be happy now. Most people born healthy are limitless. We limit ourselves. Yeah, most people are born happy too, right? You think about it like a baby doesn't really understand anything other than what it learns and gets from its environment. And if you were naturally raised in a positive household, most likely you are going to have a demeanor about you that is very encouraged and positive and not negative, and those are generally what ends up making you feel happy. Um, like I had a friend who grew up in a very religious household. And what was funny about it is like they didn't really act like what I remember like a lot of religious folks like, would be like this very, I don't know, like this very straight, like non, I don't know how to put, like, don't show any signs of anything outside of what would be considered a very Christian behavior or something like that. Like, I remember like, seeing families like that. But then this one particular family that I hung out with who were very, religious, but they didn't act that way at all. Like they were very cool with, like even people like, say cussing or something like that. Like they weren't shocked by it. They just were very cool and casual about everything in the world. And like, they were really into it for themselves and how it is that they could use that for their own energy and their own positive, their positive aspects of the world and everything that they are seeing. But they didn't really project that belief system onto anybody else. But you could certainly see the positive energy that came from it, which was really amazing to actually witness. I always appreciated that out of them. Okay, there is a message here. Hold on one second, guys. I gotta see what that. Oh, okay. It's a group chat. All right. I got to check the messages because All Nighter sends me one every once in a while saying, hey, dude, you forgot this one. I always see everybody in the negative because I'm vegan and I don't understand why they kill to live. Oh, M Rider 777, yeah. And that's a difficult one to kind of overcome because really it's a personal choice when it comes to whether or not you're gonna, you're gonna eat meat or not. Now, I have to give it, I'm a meat eater. Like I really enjoy ribeyes, I enjoy chicken, I enjoy fish, I enjoy all that stuff and I eat it regularly. But I've also raised a lot of my own food, and I have a lot of respect for how it is that I raised my food. Like, I wanted them to have the best life possible so that when it came time for me to actually go through the process of making this into food for me to eat, that I was giving them the best experience they possibly could to get there. Now, granted, I also understand that when you hatch a chicken that's of a meat breed, like the Cornish cross rocks, what ended up happening is you put that bird on a limited time anyway, because that bird should never have been created to begin with. It's a hybrid bird that's going to grow incredibly fast. And if you allow it to grow beyond the 8 weeks that it takes to get to a full size, harvestable bird, if you let it go beyond that, you are actually creating a very cruel environment for that thing to exist in because of the sheer amount of weight and heart issues and problems that they have with their health from being an oversized creation that should never have existed in the first place. There's actually the most humane thing to do is to actually dispatch it. Now, again, maybe even creating it shouldn't have been taking place in, the eyes of a vegan. And I can understand that and respect it from that point of view. But we are meat eaters in this world. And in order to provide enough food for the entire population to eat, we have to have this terminal breed poultry, which means that it would never have existed in the wild. It would never exist in beyond the 8 weeks that it takes to grow it. And if we didn't have it, your vegan priced food would be off the charts because that's what everybody would be eating. Right? So, kind of be thankful for it in that sense. And I don't have any negative looks towards vegan. Like I went on vegan diet for a while myself just to experience what it was like. And to be honest with you, it felt pretty good. I felt like, I don't know, like maybe I wouldn't necessarily say like, cleaner feeling, but it didn't feel as sluggish, kind of thing. But then also I didn't like the I don't know, like you feel satisfied when you eat meat. Like when you eat a big old steak and potatoes and all that other stuff, you're like, felt good. You feel real good and full, like you gotta love. When I was on those vegan diets, I never felt that way. All right, I never felt like it was completely like I got enough. And that was just, I guess that might have been just me and the experience that I had with it. But I always kind of remember that it was just like I never felt like I was really ever, quite satisfied or filled. All right. Once a depressing view hooks in the brain, it's hard to shake. Oh man, Wayne, ain't that the truth? And in fact, it's kind of funny because I think like you can get so deep into a point of depression that it really becomes so normal of an experience that you don't even realize that you're depressed anymore. It's become such a normal experience for you in your daily life that you don't even realize that you're even depressed. You just think that's just the way it is, just because that's the way you've always experienced it, like chronic depression. And yeah, shaking something that you don't even realize that you have, like how would you even do that? Like you can't. You have to at least experience a time in your life where you weren't depressed to even know if you are depressed. Like what if you just raised in complete depression your entire life? Low income family, bad neighborhoods, bad schools, bad teachers, bad parents, bad friends, bad everything. You lived in this depressive life and now you're growing up and you have like, a regular job, regular life, regular thing going on, but you don't feel quite, thrilled about the whole experience. Yeah, it's probably because you're living in chronic depression and didn't even realize that's what the case is. Like, you don't even know what it would be like to not be that way. And so therefore, it just simply doesn't exist. And you don't know it. I imagine a lot of people live that way, you know? All right, you just don't get enough calories out of eating grass. I did recluse for a long time. Yeah, it sucks to be in that rut. Yeah. And so, and here's the other thing about it is just like, I'm going to have to call it quits here before too long because my battery's going to die on the phone. But, one of the things that was was hard for me was a lot of the information that I was taking in was very negative, very depressing, and then I viewed it in that fashion. I gave it that sort of meaning. So it wasn't just necessarily the information that I was taking in, but the meaning that I was giving the information that I was taking in. I gave it meaning that this is bad, this is horrible, this is ruining my life, this is something that you have to protect yourself from, and all that other stuff, like the negative New World Order view. I ran with that for a very long time. And so when I took that and I changed the meaning around and I said, okay, this stuff is heavy. It's very difficult. It's hard. It's frustrating and all that other stuff. But yet I know I can use this information to better myself, to better my position, to understand the current situation so that I know how it is that I can conduct myself dealing with the fact that a lot of the inequalities that we are now facing are not going to reverse. When I started looking at it in that fashion, it really changed for me and things started getting a lot better. Alrighty, guys, I'm going to call it quits. Thank you so much for being here. My phone is about ready to die. Let me see if I can find the X. All right, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me